Action also ceased, its head sank, and it was dead. Jethro, as soon as he had delivered his blow, ran to Amuba. "Are you hurt?" he asked anxiously. "No, I don't think so," Amuba gasped. "The brute has knocked all the breath out of my body, but that's better than if he had hit me in the leg, for I think he would have broken it had he done so. How is the woman? Is she dead?" "I have not had time to see," Jethro replied. "Let me help you to your feet, and let us see if any of your ribs are broken. I will see about her afterward." Amuba, on getting up, declared that he did not think he was seriously hurt, although unable for the time to stand upright. "I expect I am only bruised, Jethro. It was certainly a tremendous whack he gave me, and I expect I shall not be able to take part in any sporting for the next few days. The crocodile was worth a dozen hippopotami. There was some courage about him." They now walked across to Chebron, who was stooping over the figure of the crocodile's victim. "Why, she is but a girl!" Amuba exclaimed. "She is no older than your sister, Chebron." "Do you think she is dead?" Chebron asked in hushed tones. "I think she has only fainted," Jethro replied. "Here!" he shouted to one of the peasants who were gathered round the crocodile. "One of you run down to the water and bring up a gourd full." "I don't think she is dead," Amuba said. "It seemed to me that the crocodile had seized her by the leg." "We must carry her somewhere," Jethro said, "and get some woman to attend to her. I will see if there is a hut near." He sprang up to the top of some rising ground and looked round. "There is a cottage close at hand," he said as he returned. "I dare say she belongs there." Bidding two of the peasants run to fetch some women, he lifted up the slight figure and carried her up the slope, the two lads following. On turning round the foot of a sand hill they saw a cottage lying nestled behind it. It was neater and better kept than the majority of the huts of the peasants. The walls of baked clay had been whitewashed and were half covered with bright flowers. A patch of carefully cultivated ground lay around it. Jethro entered the cottage. On a settle at the further end a man was sitting. He was apparently of great age. His hair and long beard were snowy white. "What is it?" he exclaimed as Jethro entered. "Has the God of our fathers again smitten me in my old age, and taken from me my pet lamb? I heard her cry, but my limbs have lost their power, and I could not rise to come to her aid." "I trust that the child is not severely injured," Jethro said. "We had just killed a hippopotamus when we heard her scream, and running up found a great crocodile dragging her to the river, but we soon made him drop her. I trust that she is not severely hurt. The beast seemed to us to have seized her by the leg. We have sent to fetch some women. Doubtless they will be here immediately. Ah, here's the water." He laid the girl down upon a couch in the corner of the room, and taking the gourd from the peasant who had brought it sprinkled some water on her face, while Amuba by his direction rubbed her hands. It was some minutes before she opened her eyes, and just as she did so two women entered the hut. Leaving the girl to their care, Jethro and the boys left the cottage. "I trust that the little maid is not greatly hurt," Amuba said. "By her dress it seems to me that she is an Israelite, though I thought we had left their land behind us on the other side of the desert. Still, her dress resembles those of the women we saw in the village as we passed. And it is well for her it does so, for they wear more and thicker garments than the Egyptian peasant women, and the brute's teeth may not have torn her severely." In a few minutes one of the women came out and told them that the maid had now recovered and that she was almost unhurt. "The crocodile seems to have seized her by her garments rather than her flesh, and although the teeth have bruised her, the skin is unbroken. Her grandfather would fain thank you for the service you have rendered him." They re-entered the cottage. The girl was sitting on the ground at her grandfather's feet holding one of his hands in hers, while with his other he was stroking her head. As they entered, the women, seeing that their services were no longer required, left the cottage. "Who are those to whom I owe the life of my grandchild?" the old man asked. "I am Chebron, the son of Ameres, the high priest of the temple of Osiris at Thebes. These are my friends Amuba and Jethro, two of the Rebu nation who were brought to Egypt and now live in my father's household." "We are his servants," Amuba said, "though he is good enough to call us his friends." "'Tis strange," the old man said, "that the son of a priest of Osiris should thus come to gladden the last few hours of one who has always withstood the Egyptian gods. And yet had the crocodile carried off my Ruth, it would have been better for her, seeing that ere the sun has risen and set many times she will be alone in the world." The girl uttered a little cry, and rising on her knees threw her arms round the old man's neck. "It must be so, my Ruth. I have lived 110 years in this land of the heathen, and my course is run; and were it not for your sake I should be glad that it is so, for my life has been sorrow and bitterness. I call her my grandchild, but she is in truth the daughter of my grandchild, and all who stood between her and me have passed away before me, and left us alone together. But she trusts in the God of Abraham, and he will raise up a protector for her." Chebron, who had learned something of the traditions of the Israelites dwelling in Egypt, saw by the old man's words that Jethro's surmises were correct and that he belonged to that race. "You are an Israelite," he said gently. "How is it that you are not dwelling among your people instead of alone among strangers?" "I left them 30 years back when Ruth's mother was but a tottering child. They would not suffer me to dwell in peace among them, but drove me out because I testified against them." "Because you testified against them?" Chebron repeated in surprise. "Yes. My father was already an old man when I was born, and he was one of the few who still clung to the faith of our fathers. He taught me that there was but one God, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, and that all other gods were but images of wood and stone. To that faith I clung, though after a while I alone of all our people held to the belief. The others had forgotten their God and worshiped the gods of the Egyptians. When I would speak to them they treated my words as ravings and as casting dishonor on the gods they served. My sons went with the rest, but my daughter learned the true faith from my lips and clung to it. She taught her daughter after her, and 10 years ago, when she too lay dying, she sent Ruth by a messenger to me, praying me to bring her up in the faith of our fathers, and saying that though she knew I was of a great age, she doubted not that when my time came God would raise up protectors for the child. So for 10 years we have dwelt here together, tilling and watering our ground and living on its fruit and by the sale of baskets that we weave and exchange for fish with our neighbors. The child worships the God of our fathers, and has grown and thriven here for 10 years. But my heart is heavy at the thought that my hours are numbered, and that I see no way after me but that Ruth shall return to our people, who will assuredly in time wean her from her faith." "Never, grandfather," the girl said firmly. "They may beat me and persecute me, but I will never deny my God." "They are hard people, the Israelites," the old man said, shaking his head, "and they are stubborn and must needs prevail against one so tender. However, all matters are in the hands of God, who will again reveal himself in his due time to his people who have forgotten him." Amuba, looking at the girl, thought that she had more power of resistance than the old man gave her credit for. Her face was of the same style of beauty as that of some of the young women he had seen in the villages of the Israelites, but of a higher and finer type. Her face was almost oval, with soft black hair, and delicately marked eyebrows running almost in a straight line below her forehead. Her eyes were large and soft, with long lashes veiling them, but there was a firmness about the lips and chin that spoke of a determined will and gave strength to her declaration, "Never!" There was silence a moment, and then Chebron said almost timidly: "My father, although high priest of Osiris, is not a bigot in his religion. He is wise and learned, and views all things temperately, as my friends here can tell you. He knows of your religion, for I have heard him say that when they first came into this land the Israelites worshiped one God only. I have a sister who is of about the same age as Ruth, and is gentle and kind. I am sure that if I ask my father he will take your grandchild into his household to be a friend and companion to Mysa, and I am certain that he would never try to shake her religion, but would let her worship as she chooses." The old man looked fixedly at Chebron. "Your speech is pleasant and kind, young sir, and your voice has an honest ring. A few years back I would have said that I would rather the maiden were dead than a handmaid in the house of an Egyptian; but as death approaches we see things differently, and it may be that she would be better there than among those who once having known the true God have forgotten him and taken to the worship of idols. I have always prayed and believed that God would raise up protectors for Ruth, and it seems to me now that the way you have been brought hither in these latter days of my life is the answer to my prayer. Ruth, my child, you have heard the offer, and it is for you to decide. Will you go with this young Egyptian lord and serve his sister as a handmaiden, or will you return to the villages of our people?"